Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Amy plays Echo Encourage, targeting Assembly Worker. She also controls an Assembly Worker token that she made with Urza's factory and an animated Mishra's factory. Which creatures get the buff? Okay, so the first thing that we can notice is that Echo Encourage says that all creatures with the same name as the targeted creature get the buff. The creature that was targeted is named Assembly-Worker, so anything with this name counts, even if it's somehow different from the thing that we're actually targeting. We'll start off with looking at the Mishra's factory. We can see that the ability that animates it changes its card type and adds the Assembly Worker creature type. But it doesn't say anything about the card's name. Accordingly, even after it's animated, this card is still named Mishra's factory, which is definitely not the same thing as Assembly Worker. So it would not get the +2/+2 from Echo Encourage. Next up, we'll consider the token. Now, this is actually kind of interesting because Urza's factory does not say what the name of the token is. We'll need to take a look at the comprehensive rules for that. If the effect that creates a token does not specify its name, the default is for the name to be the same as the token's subtypes plus the word token. If you've seen my Judging for the Win branded tokens, you know that I properly reflect that on both the name and the type line, which for some reason is more than Wizards of the Coast can say for their own official tokens. But anyway, this gives us the answer to the other part of our original question. Officially, the token from Urza's factory is named Assembly Worker Token, which is also not the same thing as Assembly Worker, so this one does not get buffed either. Now, it turns out that the answer to this question has changed, and there was a period in Magic's history where that token would have gotten the buff. When I made a video about this interaction a few years ago, I joked that maybe the reason Mishra's factory didn't get the buff from the Echo Encourage was maybe it isn't a union shop. But I guess Wizards of the Coast must have sent some Pinkerton agents over to Urza's factory too, because now it doesn't get the buff either. If you're interested in the actual reasoning behind that change, I covered that in my video talking about whether you could name blood with Pithing Needle. Now, speaking of history, there was another really interesting historical note that I covered in my original video on this scenario. I suppose it's a good thing that I dragged my feet making this update video for so long, because the rules around that have actually changed in a way that's relevant to the discussion that I gave at that time. If you're only interested in the ruling, you can check out here, because the rest of this is going to be talking about Magic templating, but I'd appreciate if you were to leave a like and a comment so that the algorithm doesn't punish me too hard for not trying to waste your time. Now, maybe you noticed that the name of the actual creature Assembly Worker is hyphenated, and you wondered why that is. In normal English, Assembly Worker is not hyphenated, so why would it be hyphenated in the card name and the creature type? Well, to see why that is, we are going to need a little bit of historical background. See, in the earliest days of Magic, creature types weren't really a thing. Okay, so they were a thing if you happened to be one of a handful of actually supported creature types, or one of the types that had rules baggage associated with it. For everything else, it was basically just a placeholder. That's how we got stuff with creature types like Leper and Folk of Van Hava. In fact, there are a surprising number of cards from Magic's earliest sets where the creature type was just the card name pasted down onto the type line. Other cards didn't have subtypes at all. In fact, the first time that a card that wasn't a creature was printed with a subtype was in, pause now to think about your answer, it literally didn't happen until lands with subtypes were printed in 8th edition. This predates the invention of the first artifact type introduced in Marodin 1, the introduction of Arcane and Shrine cards in Kamigawa, and the entire concept of Planeswalkers as a card type. Now, that's not to say that other subtypes didn't exist. Prior to 8th edition, auras were known as local enchantments, and their subtypes consisted of the word enchant plus whatever words followed it. Basic land types were already well established, and cards had been printed with what would become land subtypes later. Heck, there were even cards that had non-basic subtypes by this time. It's just that for some reason, it never occurred to WotC that they should put those on the card's actual type line, which is how we ended up with hilarious stuff like this. All right, so the first printing of any Assembly Worker card was Mishra's Factory, all the way back in Antiquities. Now, as you can see, that version, along with the 4th ed reprint, uses the normal English non-hyphenated spelling of Assembly Worker. By the time they came out with the Judge promo in 2005, it had been changed to the hyphenated version. The reason for this is that in 6th edition, Wizards standardized the type line on creatures to have the layout that would eventually be used across the board. The card type separated from the subtypes with a long dash. Now, one issue came up though. If a card had multiple subtypes, how would you know what they were? It was decided that a space could be used to separate discrete subtypes. So this Cat Warriors would have creature type Cat and creature type Warrior. And this Ragman would have creature types Rag and Man. Yeah, that sort of brought up another issue. Rag and man are obviously supposed to be two parts of the same creature type, not two separate ones. As creature types became more established, this issue came up with other creatures, and they came up with the solution of hyphenating types that were meant to go together, or just changing the creature to have sensible types. And when WotC printed Assembly Worker in Time Spiral, they hyphenated its name so that it would have the same name as its creature types, another throwback to ye olde days of Magic. Now, as other card types were given their own subtypes, Wizards ported the rule about how spaces were used to separate distinct subtypes to them as well. For example, check out another land originally printed in Antiquities. You can see that this 8th edition Urza's Tower checks to see if you have a land with the subtypes Urza's and Mine, and a land with the subtypes Urza's and Power-Plant. If you're wondering why they couldn't make Power and Plant into two separate types the way they did for Urza's and Mine, well, that's because Plant was already an existing creature type. If an Urza's Power Plant became a creature, how would you know whether it had the Plant Land type or the Plant Creature type? So for years, they followed the restriction that card types, subtypes, and supertypes could not include a space. Up until another pop quiz. Can you guess when they first broke this rule? Drumroll, please. If anyone legitimately got this one, I'd be very impressed. Go ahead and gloat in the comments. Yeah, so technically, Wizards changed this rule in 2009 when they did Planes and Plane Chase. The rule in the CR was adjusted so that planes could only ever have a single type, meaning that spaces could be part of the text string used to print that single type. Now, this special exception applied only to planes, though. Everything else needed to have single-word subtypes. And that's how it was and how it would stay until WotC got a very compelling reason to change how it worked for creatures. In contrast to the rest of these changes, this one actually happened fairly recently. In 2023, we got the first creatures with a two-word type, and that type is Time Lord. Now, unlike Magic, I don't really know anything about Doctor Who, and I also don't care enough about that IP to waste my time researching it. But I assume that Time Lord is an established thing in that universe, and that for branding reasons it was unacceptable to hyphenate it. Because Magic had by this time stopped trying to pretend that their gameplay was the primary concern, the rules team was forced to figure something out in order to accommodate this. Now, as noted earlier, spaces were what separated creature types, and the rules team couldn't just recycle the solution that they used for planes, where they just said that they always have one subtype because, well, most creatures have multiple creature types. How would you know whether the Valeyard had creature types of Time Lord and Noble, or Time Lord and Noble, or for that matter, Time and Lord Noble? The answer came all the way back in Mirrodin 1, and it was the first time that a comprehensive list of all the creature types was included in the CR document. It wasn't in a rule, but way down in the glossary. During the M10 rules changes, this list was removed from the glossary and became its own rule, and the same thing happened for the other card types' lists of their subtypes as part of the same update. Ever since then, there's been a rule giving a comprehensive list of all the creature types in the CR, and it was therefore decided that since this list was already there and being actively maintained, individual creature types could be identified as one- or two-word phrases that appeared on this master list in the CR, which is the state of things today. This is a similar solution to the one that was implemented in M14 to identify cards originally printed in various expansions, since it was deemed undesirable for different printings of cards like City of Brass to have gameplay differences between them. Based on the fact that, like the rule for planes, this solution hasn't been rolled out to any other card types, my read on this situation is that WotC silently acknowledges this as an inelegant kludge for which no better alternative exists. So I don't expect to see any more multi-word subtypes, either for creatures or for anything else, outside of another situation like the Doctor Who one. The truly tragic part of this is that Lord is a historic creature type which appears on the paper versions of a few very iconic cards, which makes Time Lord as a creature type extra confusing. That's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another Daily Ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.